Right, this is just my video for the cannabis addiction. I mentioned in that video about smoking addiction, so I'm going to give you some thoughts on addictions and my personal understanding of my own addictions, and a bit of my testimony and in faith, and how the Lord helped me remove that addiction in one go when I was first saved, but because I fell by the wayside and backslid and picked it up later on through just through adversity, and it was just such a nervous habit I had. It was one of the hardest things I had to give up, and after I picked it up again, I just couldn't seem to shake it. It was kind of bane and thorn in my side, like I've mentioned previously, and from experience, I know the Lord won't be mocked. Really, He's quite strict, and it's plain and simple. You know, you've got to give up these things, and that's what I'm struggling to do. So thankfully, cannabis addiction wasn't. I wouldn't say that was a real addiction. That was more the addictive side. If you like getting high, well, I put away those things a long time ago. I don't like getting high. I don't like these psychoactive effects. And I'm going to cover a bit about that on the medical side, the treatment side, after I've just spoken a bit about nicotine addiction. So my next goal is to kick the habit. Now, I've tried cold turkey before. Now I just can't seem to do that. I've done it the first time, or the Lord done it for me, so it's something it's not happening this time. So I'm trying other methods. I've tried patches to give up smoking. That just makes me worse, just makes me want to smoke more. And I also know from experience, it doesn't matter how you cut down, if you reduce your intake, it's still just as hard to give up that last one than it is, well, for me anyway, than it is the whole lot. I'd rather just cold turkey and go without, but I've not been able to do that. It's something I just can't get over. So I've tried the e-cigarettes. Now, I was very sceptical about the vaporizers and the chemicals in them, and I investigated the propylene glycerol. I think it's glycerine, propylene glycerine. Now that's more dangerous than smoking, and I haven't really dug deep into this, but my suspicion is it's the tobacco manufacturers getting ownership, and it's a method of getting the poisons into because people have given up smoking cigarettes for their vaporizers, the electronic the cigarette machines. That it's a method that they get that poison into you some other way. And I looked up, I've got a document of all the chemicals burning propylene glycerol and all the dangerous chemicals in that. And one of the things, it helps your body absorb toxins. Well, that's not a good thing. And there's formaldehyde. That's another toxic substance. So these are just as bad as smoking. But there is an alternative, which is vegetable glycerine. Now that's one just made from pure vegetable extract, and there's not to my knowledge, there's not any toxic vapours. It's like and because of the vaporizer, there's no tar, there's no exhaust. It's just pure vapour, almost like water vapour. But it's hard to the way it's manufactured and sold is that it's very hard to find the vegetable alternatives, because it's very narrow. It's like finding a needle in a haystack for the healthy equivalent. I brought one of these. This is a pharmaceutical for medical purposes, a vaporizer. And looking into, now I brought this before I brought any of the liquids, you see, and then I realised, I can't get hold of the liquid, it's got all that horrible chemical, and what a waste, I've wasted my money. Then I found the vegetable, the pure organic alternative, so I thought, well, I'm going to try this avenue to help me beat the smoking habit. Smoking for me is not only I was addicted to nicotine, and that was through my parents, they were smokers. I was probably born addicted. I was constantly absorbing second-hand smoke, and I got addicted that way. And and eventually, I was quite young, about 8 years old. I just wanted, or even younger, I wanted to try a cigarette. And when my parents weren't around, I went and rolled one myself out of the butts and cigarette ends, and I got addicted because of the nicotine rush, and then I was addicted. Then I was addicted from there on. I had a habit, that's ingrained, and with all my other kind of post-traumatic stress, I'm a nervous person. It's something. The two seem to go hand in hand. And then you've got the added addiction on top, because nicotine is an addictive drug. It's a very powerful drug indeed. So that's my method of breaking the habit. Now I'm not there yet, so I'm going to try this. I actually grow my own tobacco. Now that's lawful to do as long as it's not produced into cigarettes or it's shredded. You shred a certain amount, and then it becomes taxable, and then HMS Customs will want the tax from that. But they do allow you to grow your tobacco, hang it, and leave it dry. Now you can do that, and then just pick a bit off when you want it. That's fine, and that's what I started to grow my own tobacco, because it's healthy, it hasn't got added chemicals. I studied the tobacco industry before the EU. Now, at that time, for hundreds of years, tobacco farmers were just growing their tobacco, harvesting it, and they used to hang it in sheds. Now, some of it was just sun-dried. Some of it was air-dried in a dry barn, and some were like the more richer, maturer, like pipe tobaccos were what's called flue curing, where they would heat the 24 hours a day. They would have the shed or the barn heated, but with high humidity, so it would be warm, and so there wouldn't be any mould. And it would cure the tobacco. It would dry very slowly, and it would dry and eventually ripen, and you get a stronger concentrate of nicotine, and you get a more richer tobacco, and some of the plant would turn to sugars. So that was the preferred method. That was always the method. So there's many curing methods, and that's what I got an article on before the European Union stepped in and took over the tobacco industry. There's a documentary, I'm going to upload it, done by a French Canadian, a woman. She was a investigative journalist, and she'd done a full report on the tobacco conspiracy, where all the major manufacturers were all around the same table, and it was a 60-year plan of making and employing scientists to make tobacco more addictive, and they've done that by adding certain chemicals. But I'm not going to get into that too much, but I want to get back to the old methods, because it's just simply the truth. So tobacco never had any additives in it, and the only can, now there's a few scientists and doctors from Switzerland who'd done a paper on this. I think it was around the 50s or 60s, and there'd never been any cases of cancer from smoking tobacco. until they added the chemicals. So I once had a tin of pipe tobacco, and I pulled the label off, and it was imported from America, but in a British label, and in America they say the chemicals that they've added are give you cancer, but they don't put that on the cigarette packets in England. It's just that smoking will kill you. Well, it's not the tobacco that kills you, it's actually the chemicals that are added. And so that's just one fact. So the tobacco was cured in barns, and they would leave it for a whole year, and preserve it, and then they would keep doing that, and then they would turn it over. So the tobacco they were selling would be a year plus old, like wine and spirits. They cure it for 5-10 years, however long. So in this, I think it's around the 60s when the EU took over, they made it regulation to add chemicals. Now the chemicals were anti-fungicides. They had to put anti-fungicides in because it encouraged manufacturers to add extra water into the tobacco to make it heavier. Of course, they get less tobacco, more weight, and then you add an anti-fungicide so it won't go furry in the packet. And then they added all these other chemicals to make it more addictive. So on its own, it's not as addictive as it is with the chemicals. So that's one of the things that causes problems is the added chemicals, not actually the tobacco itself. So I've decided to try one of these vaporizers, and I grow my own tobacco. So you can't buy nicotine, just pure nicotine, to add it yourself. You have to go through manufacturers, and what's on offer is, there's like 1 out of 1,000 products where it's totally organic and healthy. So I decided to make my own. So I brought the vegetable glycerine, and I made some nicotine extract. So it's not very strong, it's Turkish tobacco, it's very low in nicotine, so I thought I'd try that. And basically I just boiled it in a distilled water and then filtered it out and added it to the glycerine, and that's what I'm going to try to wean myself off tobacco and break the habit. And then hopefully that's the way forward for me to conquer it. If that isn't the way, I'm just going to have to cold turkey. But that's the step I'm taking currently. And I've brought some pure essential spearmint oil, so you can flavour your e-liquid, or that's what it's termed as. So that's what I'm going to try to hopefully break that awful addiction of nicotine. Now nicotine, that's another fact I want to add, that nicotine is one of the most dangerous poisons in the world. If you turn nicotine into nicotine sulfate, I think it's sulfite, it's one of the most deadliest poisons known to man. Tobacco is a very dangerous plant to have in your garden. If you've got young children and they were to, I'm not saying by touching it, if they touch it, you absorb the nicotine through your skin. That wouldn't kill you, but that could possibly make a small child, sick or not very well. And if it were to eat a whole leaf, that could poison the child. So that's a danger, but I don't see it's very unlikely that a child's going to eat a whole tobacco leaf. So, but it's a bad thing nevertheless. And smoking is not good for your lungs, because a cigarette is not burning it's not combusting fully, so you're getting oil, you're breathing in oil as well as the gas and the vapour, and that's where the danger is. So to reduce that, you want a moist tobacco in a filter. That's why they put filters on the cigarettes. But these vaporizers completely vaporise the liquid, and the liquid's vegetable glycerine, so that's got to be healthier than smoking cigarettes. So that's a step forward for me, and that's the step I'm going to take in faith, and I'm hoping that will work. So that's that really with nicotine, and I want to get on to, I've been considering the on the videos, you know, I was quite honest about my experience, and you know, advise, and I thought, well, I'd advise people on that are treating it. So I want to go over a few thoughts I've had additionally onto that, because I thought, well, you know, I had to be careful, not because it may be the right way for some people. It's not for me to say. I did write to the Home Office about some concerns of making it legal, you know, and the commercial world dominating it, and also the genetically modified. What I was aware of was the genetically modified products they use to grow these plants that are in, and they did actually respond to me. But it wasn't really to do with my concerns. They just said, "Oh, the British government, from the Home Office, had no intention of legalising cannabis." So I thought, well, you know, at least they wrote back to me, and they have no intention of legalising it. But they did tell me what cannabis is available on the NHS, and it's called Savitex. I knew that anyway, and that's made from the sativa. Cannabis sativa is a variety, cannabis indica is another variety, and then there's cannabis rudialis. Now you'll get a lot of people with opinion that say, oh, that there's not very much T.H.C in sativa, and there's less in indica, but that's absolutely false. You can get sativa with high T.H.C concentrate and low C.B.D concentrate, or you can get high in both. And like with indica, you can get high T.H.C indica and low T.H.C indica with either high or low C.B.D. It's so diverse. The scale is you know, it could be on any from the ceiling to the floor on each, with T.H.C and C.B.D. So not all the plants are, and they're not stable. So if that was an avenue you're able to go down, and for health benefits, to grow your own herbal medication for. Now they treat it for, I think they said spasticity in multiple sclerosis. That's what it was being prescribed for, and I think that's for epileptic seizures. It reduces the. I think it's been found to reduce the risks of epilepsy, and there's so many other medical benefits that it has been proven to help. I don't think it's a cure, but I think it relieves symptoms. Food, you know, can make you eat. I know I said before, when my mother was in hospital, they were using it to help people with no appetite, and that's the T.H.C, that's not the C.B.D. Now I was looking into the C.B.D. I actually purchased some. You can buy this legally now. It's pure C.B.D oil. Now I don't really trust the manufacturers, but this is a medical grade oil. It's the same oil, the vegetable glycerol, with a high concentrate CBD. Now CBD it's not intoxicating, it doesn't get you high. It's actually an antipsychotic, and apparently it's helpful for people with immune diseases, people with a bad immune systems. Just like vitamin C helps your immune system, it's one of those things that helps your body, according to medical, studies. It helps your body stay on an even keel. It helps your body fight diseases. It helps your immune system. So I thought I'd try it, and I've only tried a little bit. It's not something I'm going to do regularly, and but it's something I wanted to try for myself. Doesn't it, I didn't notice any effects at all. So it could be a placebo for all I know. But you can get the pure CBD oils, but I don't think that's going to help any pain relief. So if you're using it for well, apparently it does help anxiety, so and that's why I personally thought I'd try it. So if I ever do get over anxious, now I'm not going to use it all the time, but what I'm waiting for when I have one of those periods where I'm just suddenly nervous for some reason, well, no reason at all, it's just a consequence of post-traumatic stress. It comes and goes in waves, and when the environment's bad, and whatever discipline and coping strategy you use, it doesn't take the side effects of your nerves. You become to a point where it's like shell shock. If you've seen people with shell shock, I have exactly the same symptoms, and I've had it for 40 years now, and they don't get any better, it gets worse, and then you get to a stage where the final stage is you just can't stop shaking. Now I'm on the border of that stage, like a shell shock victim who's been in the world, like in World War trenches, or experienced a lot of traumatic events beyond your body can take, and then your nerves are just obliterated, and you can't repair that. The damage is done, and of course it's psychological as well, because you've got the memory of the trauma, and it's a symptom of that. So that's why I wanted to try this. So but whether it will work or not, I have tried. It's supposed to make you feel more energetic, and I have noticed myself feeling more energetic, but I don't know if this is down to the CBD oil, or because I've changed my my diet really, and been taking high levels of vitamin C. So that was just the other thing I wanted to cover. And if you are in a position to grow your own and produce your own, what I would personally do if you see, now I don't really trust this Sabotex because it's very high in T.H.C. So there could be there is a lot of psychoactive properties. Now if it's balanced with C.B.D, that's in nature you get a balance, so you get breeders, and commercial breeders were breeding out the T.H.C, C.B.D, so it's all T.H.C high percentage in the plant, so that's what's making you high, and you have the psychoactive effects, the psychosis and the paranoia, and in nature you get this would counteract that, so you wouldn't get those effects. And the plants I grew were quite balanced, but the trouble is you have to breed that in and keep that stable. Now that's a very skilled job. I'm just a novice, but I did manage to achieve a stable variety. So what I would do, if it would be, I was thinking of treating myself, if it was for something like cancer, or one of the benefits, it doesn't take away pain, but it helps you manage pain, and it helps you be more active with that pain. So it's a way up. So if you were, like, for instance, on some painkillers or mild painkillers, and you were taking the cannabis oil, the Sabotex oil, it would help you feel more energetic. It would help your appetite. It would help you feel more able to function and do things, which you could weigh up. Well, that's better than having no exercise and doing nothing and feeling poor all the time. It is a step up to help you actually do a few more tasks than you would otherwise to do, and the pain wouldn't prevent you doing that. So it does relieve pain symptoms, but I don't think the cannabis is really, with severe pain, it's not strong enough to ever, it doesn't matter how much you take, it's not strong enough to take away pain, but it does help you manage the pain you do have. So that's one of the proper benefits. I know that like I say, the other symptoms, it's very good for migraines. I suffered migraines, and I tried all the remedies, even keeping hydrated and avoiding all the foods that trigger migraines. I still had migraines, and with my migraines, it's genetic. It's because I got the blood vessels are restrict in your brain, and that causes the throbbing because the blood's building up pressure in the narrowing arteries. It's in our family, in my mum's side, in the family, to suffer with aneurysms, and that's where you get a rupture because the pressure and the vein burst open. But I had some treatment years ago, beta blockers. I was on beta blockers for 2 years. Now they're not very nice. They slow your heart rate down. But the theory was, after 2 years of taking beta blockers, it reduced the symptom severity, and it really did work. I used to get terrible vomiting for 72 hours, and I couldn't eat anything. The only thing that I could have was to call an emergency doctor and have an injection, and I never actually ever done that. I just suffered it, and they were terrible. Even you get the zigzags and the visual disturbances, and that's the warning where you need to treat it and stop what you're doing and sit down and rest, and then treat it with painkillers. But if you leave it any longer than that and it gets into an attack, you can't digest anything. Smells will make you sick. Anything you put in your mouth will make you sick. Even drinking water would make me sick. So it was a very horrible thing, but the beta blockers cured that. And actually, cannabis actually does help. I never had any migraines with cannabis, so there is positive things to it. It's just the psychoactive properties are dangerous to your mind. It's hard to articulate, but the language to use, but it can really change the way you think. And if you're like an elderly, vulnerable person, you've never done any mind-altering drugs, it can be really a terrifying experience because you just don't know what's going on. So, and while you're going through that, you can't see the end of it. If you haven't had that experience, it's only temporary. But if you haven't, you can really go out of your mind because of the paranoia, and that can open you up to all sorts of demonic whisperings. So I think it's a very dangerous thing. But with the right balance, you may not get those symptoms. One person may get the symptoms, one person may not, but the chances of the balance of the T.H.C and the C.B.D not being right can be very dangerous. And so I can't really speak for Savitex. I've never tried it. I've only tried the plant. So if I were to do it, I know what variety I would use, and I would make the oil in like a distill or a pressure cooker, and I'd mix it with distilled water, and I'd make my own concentrate, and then add it to just like the nicotine, I'd add it to the vegetable glycerine. Then I would make my own C.B.D, T.H.C medicine. But I can't do that because it's illegal to grow it in this country. So I think you can in Ireland and other parts of Europe, and I know Israel, they're the leaders in this field, that they've been studying cannabis from the 40s and 50s. All the knowledge comes from the Israelites, So I've studied this quite thoroughly, but it is a commercial world, and it's Satan's world. It's dominated by Satan, so you've got to be really careful, and that's why I would go down the route of producing my own, because I have that experience, but I would never prescribe that to somebody else. I think that's something somebody has to personally work out with the Lord to know, whether to go down that avenue. So that's one of the other things I wanted to cover about cannabis. I am a believer in herbal remedies, and it is a herb. Technically it is a herb, but it's got that very dangerous drug in it. So, but with the right balance, it can be used as an effective medicine. But to produce that medicine, you've got to be skilled. And so you either learn how to do that skill yourself, or you rely on the commercial skilled manufactured stuff, which is Sabotex and whatever else is on the market. I don't know what other countries, and I don't trust that avenue, which is why I produce it myself. So I wanted to add those thoughts. And you can get like I say, you can get all different essential oils. I brought these are a bit new agey, but it's the only place I could get 100% essential oils, and you got flavours like I think these are used for incense, but these are edible. The pure 100% extract. I've got mandarin, strawberry, plum, raspberry, blackcurrant, grape. You can anything. Any vegetable matter, you can turn it, get the oils out through distilling it, and like they do mint oil, and then you can flavour your own medications with the oils, which is something I've done with the tobacco, just to give it a bit of flavour. But the trouble with these e-cigarettes, a lot of people have, become addicted to all the different flavours. If I'd give up smoking, I'd want to give up the vaporizer as well. But if it's but these are a good avenue for medication if you're using but it's not as good as orally consuming it. So, because I'm a smoker and I need to give up smoking, I've chosen that option. But the best option would, if you're medicating, would be on drops or a tablet. And I think Sabotex is actually a drop, a liquid, which you would just drop on your tongue, I imagine. So I'm covered there, so I think that's it. Yeah, we're done.